Hello students, welcome to the English class. Let us learn the poem Ballad of the Tempest, written by the poet James T. Fields. About the poet James T. Fields. Poet was born in Portsmouth, New Hampshire on December 31st, 1817. His father was a sea captain. He died even before James was just 3 years. He began writing poetry at the age of 14 years. His first poetry was published in 1837. In 1838, he delivered his anniversary poem to the Boston Mercantile Library. A number of his works are collected in his books Ballads and Verses. Let us know the meanings of a few new words what you come across in this poem. What exactly is ballad? It is a narrative composition in rhythmic verse suitable for singing. The poem can be sung. Tempest is a violent storm, a strong storm. Shatter is to break apart, to cut into pieces. Rattle, to make a rapid succession of short, sharp voices. Sound of the tin falling or something like that. It makes a short, sharp voices. And shudder is to shake. Stout is brave. Stagger is to come unsteadily. Breakers, large turbulent waves moving towards land. Students, you need to refer to page number 136 and 137 in your textbook for the poem reading, and also you need to memorize this poem. Before we move on to the poem, let us see. There's a common statement made that fortune favors the brave. That means people who are ready to face the situations, they will be favored. They will be moved out of that situation. How is it possible? Even Columbus had a lot of faith in the Almighty. Columbus, when he went to discover a land, he had lots of obstacles on his path of his discovery. But it was all finally removed and he could find a land. How was it possible? Because of his faith in the Almighty. But is it true of everybody? No. Now let us see the poem. In this poem, where the sailors face a great peril, the sailors who were traveling in the ship had to face a great danger. Whether someone will come to their rescue or not, let us know through this poem. We were crowded in the cabin, not a soul would dare to sleep. It was midnight on the waters, and a storm was on the deep. Here, the poem, The Ballad of the Tempest, is a narrative poem. The speaker here is one of the sailors aboard the ship. Who is the speaker in the poem? A person, a sailor who is traveling in the ship is a speaker. It was midnight on the sea, and a great storm broke out. The people on board the ship huddled themselves in a cabin out of fear. The people who were traveling in the ship got so scared of the violent storm that broke in the mid of the sea, and they were all huddling themselves, moving towards themselves in the cabin because of the fear. Thus a fearful thing in winter, to be shattered by the blast, and to hear the rattling trumpet thunder cut away the mast. None on the board could sleep for fear of the storm. The people who were traveling in the ship were not able to sleep because of the fear of the storm. To make matters worse, it was winter and the blast of the tempest was terrifying. And even the situation went worse because it was a winter season and the blast of the tempest, that is, the violent storm that broke out, the noise that made was very terrifying. They shuddered to think what would happen if the strong winds cut away the mast. Now there was a question in the minds of the people, what would happen if the mast is cut away? The mast of the ship is cut away, then the ship will not be able to move further. So we shuddered there in silence, for the stoutest held his breath, while the hungry sea was roaring and the breakers talked with death. Now, they shuddered to think what would happen if the strong winds cut away the mast, even the bravest of the men on board held his breath, for it looked like the huge waves of the hungry sea would devour everything in its way. So the storm was so fearful that even the strongest or the bravest men on the board on the ship held his breath They were also so fearful because it looked like the huge waves of the hungry sea. The sea, it seemed as though the sea was very hungry and would eat away the people traveling in the ship, moving in the ship. As thus we sat in darkness, each one busy with his prayers, we are lost, the captain shouted as he staggered down the stairs. So the people sat in darkness with a prayer on their lips. It was only the prayers which were left for them now. And the captain, who was in despair, the captain of the ship, now shouted that they were lost as he staggered down the stairs. He came down unsteadily without knowing what to do. He said that we are lost, the ship has lost its way. But his little daughter whispered as she took his icy hand, "Isn't God upon the ocean just the same as on the land?" So here now, but when all were in fear, it was the captain's little daughter taking his icy hand. Why was his icy hand? Because of the fear, the hands looked very cold. She whispered that the God who protected them on the land was the same who guarded the ocean. Now the little girl asks her father, "Isn't God upon the ocean? As the same God which protects us on the land, isn't the same God who will protect us on the ocean?" Then we kissed the little maiden, and we spake in better cheer, and we anchored safe in harbour when the morn was shining clear. Her words raised the spirits of the people. The captain's little daughter inspired the people with her words, and then the spirits of the people also grew up now, and they became more cheerful. By morning, the storm had died down, and it was bright and clear. They soon reached the harbor safely where they anchored the ship. So what did the people do when the little maiden spoke? They were also instilled with spirit, and then they were all cheerful, and by the time morning it was all bright and clear, and they were able to safely they anchored the ship, and now all the people were safe. Now it was the faith of the little girl that helped them from the weather and the storm. So such is the power of faith, says the poet here.